Hey, everybody, it's Liz joining you as usual from Central Virginia and the unceded lands of the Monacan Nation. I'm so glad that you are here with me today. And as always, if you want to know whose lands you might be residing on, be sure to check out native-land.ca. There's a phenomenal map there, really helpful for North America in particular, but covers the whole world. And yeah, thank you for being here. And if you are interested in learning more about the sacred feminine, I've had almost 100 episodes of this show, so you know there are lots of ways that you can do that. But if you want to learn from me, there are a few ways. You can check out my award winning book, Home to Her Walking the Transformative Path of the Sacred Feminine. It's available wherever you buy your books. I recently released it on Audible, so if you prefer to listen, you can do that. And you can check out the classes and the retreats that are available via the Home to Her Academy. I have a couple of really cool things coming up this fall, so be sure to check that out. You can follow me on social at Home to Her on Facebook and Instagram. And then you can go over to hometoher.com and just check out articles, past podcast episodes, all kinds of stuff there. So I will put all of this in the show notes. And if you are a regular listener, I would love it if you would consider leaving a review of the show wherever you access it. So helpful. I say this, I feel like I say this a lot, but it's not like culturally we're drowning in information about the sacred feminine. So any way that we can help each other find this, I think is wonderful. And your reviews really do help other people find this. And as always, feel free to reach out to me with your thoughts and your comments, your feedback, your suggestions. Social is a really good way to do that. Email is good too. And I always love hearing from you what is sparked from episodes, what resonates with you, what you have to say. So please do that. I think that's it. Okay, so let's get on with the show. If you have been listening for a while, you might notice that I get really, really fired up when I get to have conversations that bring together the historical and the spiritual aspects of the sacred feminine. This is kind of my jam. That's kind of what my book is about too. And so, my guest today, she's been on my radar for quite some time, and I'm just super, super excited to have her here because I know we're going to be able to get into both of those things. So, let me go ahead and introduce her to you now. Dr. Marguerite Mary Rigoglioso is the founder of Seven Sisters Mystery School, a world-renowned teacher of sacred knowledge, and the foremost authority on the history of virgin birth. So I just want to say that again because we're going to talk about that a lot. The history of virgin birth, not just a story, y'all. This is so exciting. A trusted mentor to people on healing and spiritual paths, she draws on her decades-long research and experiences with Mother Mary and Mary Magdalene to help uncover their hidden, timeless teachings and apply them to our present-day needs. The award-winning author of several books, including The Secret Life of Mother Mary, Divine Feminine Power for Personal Healing and Planetary Awakening, and The Mystery Tradition of Miraculous Conception, Mary and the Lineage of Virgin Births. She lives in Western Massachusetts, and she is joining me from her home there today. Marguerite, thank you so much for being here. It's such an honor to have you here.
Oh, thank you for having me, Liz. I feel really moved to be here. It's wonderful. I can feel your excitement and it's happily contagious.
Oh my gosh, yes, it's there. And I have to tell you that I heard you on another podcast, Sarah Poet. She's been a guest on this show. I've been a guest on her show. I'll make sure to put that in show notes if you all didn't listen to that because it was wonderful. But I heard you on her podcast, I don't know, a couple of years ago. And I think it's because Sarah told me about your work initially and I was like, what? It just totally blew my mind. So we'll get into it. I'm going to leave y'all on a cliffhanger right there, but I'm really excited to have this conversation.
Yes, she's another wonderful, mystical, esoteric sister.
Yes. So, yes, she's amazing. Well, so I usually start with guests just hearing some about their spiritual background. And as I told you before we hopped on, I'm just curious. I love to hear these kinds of stories from people, but I'm especially curious as it relates to the sacred feminine and whether or not you got anything that was useful that you sort of carried forward and informed you from where you are today, or, was it a journey of something that you had to discard? So I'd love to start there.
As it happens, the longer version of what I'll tell you today is in The Secret Life of Mother Mary, the new book that just came out. So people can really get more of a sense of that because I think it's instructive. It's just so interesting to hear what other people are up to and how it compares to your own life. And sometimes it's inspiring. I mean, I would say just the spiritual journey for me, I could pick so many different points to enter with, but I was brought up Catholic. And I always try to you know, get into the homilies and things like that. But even though it was kind of boring, I mean, I was earnest about trying to get the spiritual juice that there wasn't very much of in the masses where I went. But my ears always perked up when Mary Magdalene would come along. And so fast forward, really, I mean, gosh, I started having an awakening to mystical material in the form of what we call channelers, what I call oracles, like the work of Sanea Roman and Barbara, the one who has hands of light. Her last name is going to come to me in a minute. I don't know why
Is
it's
it, there's two. Okay. Is it Hubbard? Is it that her, or is that, am I getting
no,
mixed up with somebody else?
no, that's Barbara Marks Hubbard. This one is, and it's not Barbara Marciniak because she came later in my life. Barbara Brennan. Okay. Barbara Brennan, Hands of Light. I started getting into that in my 20s. And there was this organization called Interface in the Boston area where I was living at that time. And I started going to all these juicy evening events and workshops that they had, including one on by Greta Bro, who's this therapist who told us that it was all about women and self-esteem. And she said, well, in order for you to understand how much your self-esteem has been wounded, you have to understand that we've all been cut off from the sacred feminine. And did you know that our ancestors and, most of the world did or does still venerate the sacred feminine? And it was like this big aha, right? And so from there, it just led me onto a true investigation because I became a junkie with books, even archaeology books like Maria Gimbutas. And I started going to a women's spirituality program that the Interface Foundation had. It ended up being like this 3-year journey where I met and worked with some of the leaders then of the women's spirituality movement, read, had experiences, went on goddess pilgrimages to Crete and Sicily and Greece and that sort of thing. And then eventually landed in grad school because I said, I am so eager about uncovering the historicity of all this that I need to become a scholar. And so I ended up at the California Institute of Integral Studies. And then that was really the beginning of the weave, much more of my professional self, my writing self, and my ability to be a spiritual teacher. And then, it just went on from there.
Yes. And I love it. And I feel like you kind of answered what's often my second question, which is, I'll give you a chance if you want to add to it, but how did the sacred feminine come into your life? And it sounds like it's through this interface work that you did. Yes. Is that?
Yes. And then on the heels of that, there was a goddess pilgrimage to Crete with the late Carol Christ.
Yeah.
So I went on her trip, and it was going to these ancient portal sites, literally doing ritual. I mean, this opened me up in a whole new way. I did another one in Sicily, and so I just took off from there. I
Yeah.
mean, I was all about the goddess.
Well, one thing that I love about your journey, and maybe it's because I relate to it too, is that it sounds like that it was at least somewhat sort of like more of a spiritual kind of awakening that you then went and reinforced or dug into from the historical
That's
perspective. Yeah.
That's always been my way and my passion because I've been bookish and schoolish and all that kind of stuff. I love to dig into what history says, and because you get a lot of nuggets that then can open your own what I call oracle knowing. So that's what would happen a lot is it would be like a figure eight moving between the intellectual and the intuitive. One would always feed the other. They would play within, and that's how I did my entire grad school. It's how I did my dissertation on divine birth in ancient Greece, and then that led to that was where I really went into the study of Mother Mary as a divine birth priestess. And that led to the two books that you've mentioned, the Secret Life of Mother Mary and the previous one, the mystery tradition of miraculous conception. So yeah, the Secret Life of Mother Mary just came out July 2024. So here we are, very exciting.
Yes, and it's a wonderful book. And okay, so I'm so excited to talk to you about this. This is one of those things that I think is, there have been so many gifts on this path of the sacred feminine since it started for me, but one of them is this realizing that the things that we have treated as fiction, or like, oh, it's just like a story, to actually realize, like, oh, wait a minute, what if that's just like a breadcrumb? It's kind of the same idea of how fairy tales are actually kind of encoded, like with spells and things like that, and things that we've kind of culturally forgotten the significance of. And so I so perked up when I mean, just the idea of virgin birth is, it's so, it can be so fantastical and so wild. And so I want to just dive into this with you. Like, tell me how you got on this path.
Yeah, so my first two books emerged out of my dissertation, really my first three, including the one about Mother Mary, the mystery tradition of miraculous conception. Well, that was through two things. One is I had started to read Drunvalo Melchizedek's book, The Ancient Secret of the Flower of Life. I was in graduate school at CIIS at the master's level, and I was doing my own research about Demeter and Persephone in Sicily. That was my master's thesis. And I can't quite remember the order of things. I think I might have read in Drunvalo's book that his guide, Thoth, the Egyptian god Thoth, was his direct channeler information guy, said that virgin birth was real, that Mother Mary engaged it, that there were different kinds of conception capacities and so forth. Tucked that away. And then when I was researching this book on, or my master's thesis on Demeter and Persephone as they were in Sicily, my origin place, 3/4 of my ancestors are from there. The author, Anna Maria Corradini, was writing with such rapture and in a mystical way about Demeter and Persephone as being a story of parthenogenetic birth, that Persephone actually came out of Demeter in this direct line without any male interference. And I just received right then, it was a kind of like separate and apart from anything I'd heard from Drunvalo. I directly received, oh my gosh, divine birth is real and women were doing it. So she was talking about goddesses, but I really understood that it was on every level of the hologram and it was including women. And so this was a flash of insight that felt so palpable and strong within me that it was like always with me. And my dissertation for my doctorate was going to be a study of priestesses of ancient Greece, cataloging every single thing that had been said about them in the texts. Well, as I was doing that research, what did I find? All of these stories about divine birth, divine conception, virginal conception. And sometimes it was with like male gods and female women. And so I started collecting all these pieces and chunks of information and realized that I could categorize them into types of divine birth. And I thought, this is a real priestess practice. This is not just a made up thing. And Mary was not the only person. And of course, all the time with that, I was thinking about Mother Mary. And at some point, I found her gospel, the infancy gospel of James, about her divine birth from her mother and her divine birth of Jesus, which is, what the mystery tradition of miraculous conception book is all about. And I kind of had to put that on hold while I just focused my dissertation on ancient Greece. But I would have cartloads of books coming back and forth from the CIIS library for interlibrary loan. It literally was hilarious. And by night, I would be scanning, reading, posting, noting. And by day, I'd be like writing. And that process took 9 months. And the Cult of Divine Birth in Ancient Greece was born. Well, my dissertation was born, but out of that were 2 books, The Cult of Divine Birth in Ancient Greece, and then Virgin Mother Goddesses of Antiquity. Those are the 2 really strong academic backgrounders of the evidence for divine birth in the ancient Mediterranean world, especially Greece. And so with all of that information I had, the understandings, the signs, the codings, the catalogings of types of divine birth, I knew the symbols, I knew what things meant. So then when I went into Mother Mary's Gospel, which originally was called Birth of Mary, by the way, I was able to decode and read it easily. And I understood what was going on, how these women were part of a lineage, what they were actually doing, as many details as I could glean about the actual process of divine birth, and so forth. So all of this, has been feeding into each other. And at the same time, I'm a trained oracle. I trained in psychic school for clairvoyance, but then I really trained myself in oracle knowing, claircognizance, and I have used sacred medicines to further open my consciousness. And so all of this has been, working together. I'm like an academic oracle or an oracular scholar, whatever you want to call it. And even that has been migrating lately as I've been presenting this book, The Secret Life of Mother Mary, to the world. And I've been really understanding through these conversations I've been having with people that I'm up leveling to a whole new level of being able to embody this material and these teachings, particularly from the Marys. So I'll just pause there.
Oh my gosh, so much. So fascinating. Okay, I have so many questions. This happens sometimes, so they're like all kind of bouncing in my head, and we'll see if I can remember them all. But so going back to your dissertation, tell me what kind of, or just an example of like, what are some of the sources where you were finding these references? Because they're not known in our culture, right? And I wouldn't even imagine that you're coming across it if you're studying ancient Greece in a master's program. You'd have to be looking for it, right? So I'm super curious, like where you
Well,
caught the trail.
I had that theory in my mind that women were conducting divine birth as part of a holy practice. And then I would start with the secondary scholarship, right? Jane Ellen Harrison, Arthur Cook, there are a whole bunch of other scholars of the ancient world from the early 1900s, and then more contemporarily, like Connolly is one of them. There's a whole bunch. I haven't looked at my list lately.
Yeah.
Carl Karenyi, all these people in contemporary and more classical Greek studies. And and then I would see these little shards, like there was this whole big series called Zeus by Arthur Cook. That was like a Bible to me. Then I would find things and I would then look at the original sources. And there's also this wonderful thing called theoi.com, theoi.com. And that would have the cataloging and the descriptions of all of the characters in the ancient sources with all of their original, references to Pindar and, wherever it was, Plato and all of these sources, right? These original sources, Herodotus. So I was able to track very quickly. And because we're in the online world now, you can find things accessible pretty easily, the original source material. And then I did learn a little bit of Greek to be able to get through some of it, to be able to look at some terms and say, well, that's not exactly how it's translated, or it could be translated in another way, just enough to be able to work with as much original material as I could. And I was just able to piece it all together from the women's hermeneutical perspective, if you want to use an academic term, meaning, the looking for the hidden materials, what's been denigrated, dismissed, disappeared, and so forth from a feminine perspective.
Yeah. Wow. Yes. And oh my gosh, my head's going many different places. And you mentioned her in your book too. I'm pretty sure you mentioned the book Anna, Grandmother of Jesus.
Yes. Okay. So there's an example of someone on the other end of the spectrum,
Yes.
a perfectly open oracle, right? A channeler who was bringing forth very amazing information. And then synchronistically, after I finished my dissertation on divine birth and already had in mind all the material about Mother Mary and what I was going to say about her, and I was already starting to teach about her and that material at the university level, hadn't yet written the books though, I was synchronistically led to Claire's books. I thought I was ordering another book, and I ended up ordering Anna, Grandmother of Jesus. And this came, and I poked into it, and I was like, oh my gosh, she is saying the same thing that I am. And she was channeling it or putting it together kind of right at around the same time that I was putting the material together as a scholar. And I ended up talking to Claire and meeting with her because we had so much, simpatico. I mean, I was verifying what she was saying. She was verifying what I was saying. And then she was giving more information. And to this day, I haven't really fully read her books because I want to keep my own Oracle channel sort of clear and not being influenced by her material. But I have high respect for her. And after she, delivered those two babies to the world, she was like, "Whoa, I'm taking a back seat." I tried to arrange for her to teach with me or something like that, and she's like, "I'm out of that loop now." So she delivered what she contracted for in this lifetime, and as of this moment, that's enough for her.
Yeah. And I'll put a link to that book in the show notes too. I believe her last name, is it Hartsong? Claire Hartsong? Isn't that? Yeah.
Yeah, and it's Anna, grandmother of Jesus, and then Anna, voice of the Magdalens. Okay.
Mm,
So
got
so
it.
we're all related, and she did give a very nice endorsement quote for the Mystery Tradition of Miraculous Conception, which came out in 2021, my previous book. So here we are.
And here we are. And so tell me, and maybe it seems obvious. I mean, if we know the story of Mary and Jesus, like why virgin birth was such a thing, but what was the point of it from your understanding?
Well, this is what the Greek tradition material research was so helpful for. It explained it.
Yeah.
I realized through going through all of these, not just mythical stories, not just legendary stories, but some historical stories as well of women who had given birth divinely, that the purpose was to bring forth a high holy being, an avatar, somebody above the normal vibration who could help humanity. That's what virgin birth was at its best. Of course, it became hijacked by negative influencers and forces to co-opt it to be used to bring in the patriarchal heroes, those who would decimate the matriarchy, those who would decimate the divine birth priestesshoods, and so forth. But originally, it was to bring forth high queens and high kings who would then bless the land by bringing forth their children and letting their DNA, go into the tribe to raise the vibration of humanity. And also these high beings bring in abilities and knowledge that most people don't have ready access to. So then it was perfectly understandable why Mother Mary would be involved in this, why her mother Anne would have given birth to her completely parthenogenetically, meaning in virgin fashion, no men involved, and who Jesus was, what he was all about, and that he was part of a worldwide stream of people all over, like on every continent, who have done this work, because I went deeply into I think Heartland is his name, stories of virgin birth all around the world, including Native American traditions. Okay, the Haudenosaunee, the Chalagi, the Cherokee, or the Iroquois, they have the same story in a way of a virgin born peacemaker. Okay, so it's all over the place. And when you realize Mother Mary did not act alone in the best sense of the world, the whole thing becomes very interesting, because then we wonder, well, what are women's capacities? And that is a line I crossed as well when I became instructed in the Holy Womb Chakra system that the late Hindu saint Shri Kaleshwar brought up. And he said how these are some of the processes, mantras, and yantras that Mother Mary and Mary Magdalene used to do their work and bring forth divine children. So the net continues to connect and grow. And the Holy Womb Chakra teachings are teachings available to all people. So it's like, oh my gosh, if Mother Mary used these, what benefit can they confer upon me? And I talk in the book, The Secret Life of Mother Mary, what benefit they did confer upon me. And I've seen them confer transferring benefits and miracle experiences to other people as well. So we are on a doorway to, a pathway to open the door to the sacred womb again in ways that have not been opened for quite some time and that we deeply need on the planet right now.
Yes. And once again, I have like three kind of follow-up threads, but I want to go back to a question, which is, so when I think about the story that we've been given about the birth of Jesus and the Annunciation and the Immaculate Conception, and how that's been interpreted in a way of like, well, I guess I'm thinking of original sin and how, like people being polluted by woman or whatever. But what I'm wondering about is, what is it about the involvement of, or maybe even the lack of involvement of the masculine, that takes this to a more sacred, holy place?
Mm.
Like I don't feel like in any of your writing you're implying that there's a pollution that's happening from the masculine necessarily, but like, what is it about the Parthenogenesis that makes this different somehow?
Yes,
Yeah.
right. And I should mention that I discovered several methods of what we would call divine conception. One method was virgin conception, parthenogenesis, the woman alone. Another one is the woman working with a disembodied astral being, a god, so-called. Another is a woman working with the god, but he's coming now through a male actor or king. That was ancient Egypt. And then another one was pure, like king, queen coming together and sort of incorporating the high sacred feminine, the high sacred masculine in a tantric rite. All of these done with specific rituals, intentions, processes, mantras, in order to bring forth a very high holy being. Now, in terms of the parthenogenetic part of that, the virginal part, those women were high adepts who basically were able to develop inner androgyny, inner hermaphroditism. Their masculine and feminine became so strong that they were able to conceive. And that's what I talk about in these two most recent books. So that is a process, a very deep yoga that one could undergo. But essentially what I've realized, even just this past year teaching other material from the Gnostic sources, is that we originally were hermaphrodites. Humans were hermaphrodites. Our original form was both male and female. And so when we were split by these same negative archonic forces that the Holy Family incarnated back into 2,000 years ago and have done so in various forms and families to address, to help us get out of this. Okay. It boggles the mind what you start learning about of our ancient human history just in the Gnostic sources, let alone what a lot of channelers and whistleblowers and disclosers are doing. So this story becomes huge when you understand it. So the fact of virgins becoming sovereign, hermaphroditic in and of themselves, able then to unite with the divine of all creation, Mother Divine, and give birth was like a high quantum level technology that really is a technology that comes from our starry ancestors. The Pleiades is very much involved in this. That's a whole related story with Mother Mary and so forth, but also Greece. And so one of the reasons is, the main reason is that the woman is becoming whole in and of herself. She doesn't need a male partner. And therefore, she doesn't have to worry about the level of vibration of that man, any DNA lineages that he might be carrying in that could be good or could not be good, any karma that he might be bringing into her vagina, right? Those are the virgins. That's the Mother Mary. But on the other side is the tantric unification, all right? Mary Magdalene and Jesus as partners and conceiving that way in a very high level. And let me just say, this is not just for high holy people. The Holy Womb Chakra teachings that Shri Kaleshwar brought forth, that I was certified to teach in and do have a class in available for people. It brings in how to conceive a divine child by just an ordinary couple who is spiritually minded and wants to do a specific mantra while they are having sexual relations. And then once the child is conceived, because it's a clearing and cleansing mantra that draws in divine powers and a divine soul to the woman's womb. And then the woman, after she's becomes pregnant, she does another mantra as much as possible in order to keep her place, her womb, her palace clear, and this child protected. And so there are numerous stories from, Shri Kaleshwar's tradition of children born in this way that are a cut above, because this is about conscious conception. So it's not just about these women who are impossibly high level avatars that will never reach that. It's about all of us meeting ourselves where we are and trying to raise ourselves up through these various understandings and practices that are available today. And I talk a lot about that in the Secret Life of Mother Mary book.
Yeah. So fascinating. And you mentioned, just these holy womb chakra teachings. Well, and you know what? Maybe let's back up and just speak a little bit about who Shri Kaleshwar was, because I wasn't familiar with him until I read about him in your book. And he's fairly recent, right? He passed in the last 10 years or so, did he not?
Yeah. He lived until he was 36 years old, and he had his Mahasamadhi, as they call it, left the earth plane when he was 36 back in 2012.
Hmm.
So do the math. He was born in whenever he was born, I don't know, the 70s or something like that. So he was a young man who came in to India, and they still have an ashram to him in Penakonda where his Mahasamadhi is laid, where his body is. And then there's another ashram in Laytonville, California, the American branch of it. He came in, and largely in India and then Europe, like Germany especially, but then came to the US. He was teaching materials from the ancient palm leaf manuscripts that he had collected through all these. It's like this Indiana Jones story of how he had received or synchronous collected all these manuscripts that had written on them the methods, the mantras, the drawings, the yantras, right? For not only the Holy Womb teachings, but other teachings like how to work with the 5 elements in order to gain mastery and of the Siddhic practice, the Siddhis, being able to work in miraculous ways and so forth. So there were many teachings that are codified and printed out or available in audio or video, not only by him, but also by then his students through the Divine Mother Center in Laytonville, California, and then through the SriKaleshwar.org, which publishes his books and probably has other manuscripts and monographs of teachings that he did and so forth. And then the Divine Mother Center, has these classes that are available. And then, I being certified, if you get certified, they let you teach the Holy Womb Chakra material. So this has been going through the world. There are still people who work through this lineage. It originally goes back to the Shirdi Sai Baba lineage. That was Sri Kaleshwar's teacher. So it goes back to India. And there are people, active right now. My friend Angela de la Agua is coming back from India maybe tomorrow, having brought a group to that ashram over there. So all of these things are very much connected. And this man made a splash, a small splash that's having a big wave in this lifetime. And because now I've put a lot of that stuff in the Secret Life of Mother Mary, his material, in a very accessible, readable, condensed way that connects with Mother Mary and that connects with all of us, makes it accessible.
Yes. And I was so fascinated by his teachings and sharing that, well, yeah, that Jesus ended up in India and Mary did as well. I was just like, oh, it's all so fascinating.
Yeah. Yeah, there are numerous people who have said over the years, and there apparently is evidence that Jesus was in India. And some say after his resurrection, that Kaleshwar, it basically implies that Jesus' resurrection, which happened, by the way, through Mother Mary doing these yogic practices with his broken body, resurrected him body and soul. And then zoop, he went off to India with Mary Magdalene. That's one timeline. And there's evidence that Jesus was there. And whether it was, again, before or after the resurrection, that is a whole study that would be completely fascinating. But people at the Divine Mother Center might know about it. And so it turns things on its head for us. It opens new doors, new possibilities. It gets us out of the dogmatic storyline and picture, the hijacking of these beings and their images that has kept us down for so long. That's my point in The Secret Life of Mother Mary, is to uncloak her.
Yes.
I almost use the title, The Uncloaking of Mother Mary, right? But I decided to go with The Secret Life of Mother Mary because there was something a little more compelling about that. But I'm helping to uncloak her. And Shri Kaleshwar was helping to uncloak her. And we're working in, a chain link fashion together. There are other great teachers right now. William Henry, he's really uncloaking the Marys. It's astounding.
Amazing. I wonder if you could say a little bit more about the holy womb chakra, because this is different, right, than the traditional chakras that we know. You're not talking about the sacral chakra. You're talking about something different, correct? And I'd love to hear you just explain that a little bit more.
Yeah, so Shri Kaleshwar never really said exactly where it's located in the body, but the implication was it's more like a kind of an overlay of the pelvic region for a woman. And there is an important point that's in the bodies of everyone, and this is the democratic nature of it, so that it opens up these practices and these powers to all people. It's called the Nada Bindu point, and it's 1.5 inches or so below the navel. And it's a floating energetic point that's kind of like the entry point to the powers of the Holy Womb. So it's in I think he says that Vishnu has it attached to his navel, but most other people have it sort of floating around. But it's your inner portal to the Holy Womb of all creation, Mother Divine, through your lineage, through your mother's, right? And so that women have the actual structure of the womb, the physical womb, and men have the fragrance of the womb through the Holy Womb, Nada Bindu point portal, and they can access the Holy Womb energy more strongly through the love of a woman, he says, or the thinking on or connecting with your mother, right? So the Holy Womb chakra is another whole chakra, another whole pelvic chakra that really needs to be recognized and cultivated, first of all, purified, and then uplifted through all of these mantra recitations and things like that, because this will give you power. This will give you power for manifesting in the world. It gives you power for, bringing in a higher consciousness child, for doing healing, for other people. There's a whole series of things you can do to become a healer in this tradition. And my teacher, Cindy Lindsay, is that type of healer and mentors others in that cultivation as well. And, I talk about in The Secret Life of Mother Mary, some of the miracle-ish things that happened for me.
I wanted to ask about this. Yes, please.
Associated
Yeah.
with my own use of the Holy Womb chakra practices. The timing of the 3 months, the 101 days that when I started working with this process in earnest, it's a 101-day practice with your doing your mantras, a certain number of mantras, a certain number of times a day, 108 times. And the timing was that, well, I'll leave it to readers, but I had a health reversal in a positive direction. I manifested something very major in my life, and something I didn't write about because the book was already going to press by that time. But I believe that all of this, helped me manifest a partner, which had been years of agita. essentially. And so, and I've seen other things happen in other people's lives and clients that I've worked with. I mean, things that start going on once they do or complete the mantras or right away, So there are felt effects in the three-dimensional world, in short, by doing these kinds of things that Shri Kaleshwar has brought onto the planet, and that he says Mother Mary did, Mary Magdalene did, Jesus did, and that they actually contributed to palm leaf manuscripts. They wrote things down. I mean, that would be a whole exploration, right? I mean, in another lifetime. But, you could go to people in the Divine Mother Center in Laytonville, Monica of Penaconda there, and Nityananda. They are closely associated with all this material. They may have done some of this research, so.
Fascinating. So I've got a question for you that I think I'm just curious about. What has it been like for you to be holding what I think, well, we start to manifest the people around us who are like ready for this, right? Like they show up in our world and like, but there's still that reality, right? Of you are researching something that feels very non-traditionally academic to me. You know what I mean? Like, and I'm wondering like sort of that holding those energies, because what you're talking about is it's numinous and it's esoteric and it is, and yet you are also approaching it from this academic kind of place. And I think of academia as being solidly sort of patriarchal in organization, right? It was not created with women, the participation of women. So I'm just curious, like what has that been like for you?
Well, I had to keep accessing academia from the more and more outer rungs until I wasn't there anymore. And I created my own academia. I created Seven Sisters Mystery School. I stepped out of trying to teach at university level, which I had done, trying to get a job at university level, which just wasn't happening. And I just, I met a coach. She helped me weave everything together. I started my own school and I was able to fully then do my research on my own terms. Luckily, for my dissertation at CIIS, I had Jorge Ferrer, who was my dissertation chair. I had Lucia Chiavala Birnbaum, I think was on my dissertation committee, and the late Lucia. And then Marvin Meyer was my outside reader, who was very well known in magical traditions of, ancient Greece and Egypt and so forth. And when I asked him one time, I was like, why did you agree to be on my dissertation committee as the outside reader? He's like, I don't know. And he has crossed on too now. But I think he just saw something in me and what I was doing, saw that the research was good and sound, and wanted to help me. So he anchored it as that validation from the classical Greek world in academia. Thank goddess, that I just had, and I was just very careful about who I had on this committee because could have done other people. And I was like, oh my God, I received a medicine ceremony. Do not have that guy. He will take you down and he will not have any problem doing it. So that was like, okay, I'm not going to be with him. And so, I was able to get it together enough to get the PhD letters and a very, very solid dissertation that I'm super proud of that went into books that Palgrave Macmillan was the publisher, now Springer Nature, that took it on, And then as I was accessible, because my aunt would say, why don't you write a book that everyone can read? And that was the mystery tradition of miraculous conception. It's taking unbelievable esoteric material and just making it readable. Like I was so happy when people have been saying to me, oh, these two books, oh my God, I read it in 2 days. I'm like, wow. I mean, that is deep material, but it's going down with a spoonful of honey, right?
Totally.
That was my goal. That was my aim. It has to be accessible. Same with The Secret Life of Mother Mary, which is why I really brought my personal story into this and really came out more as with my oracle side, right? None of the other books really talk so much about my oracle side, certainly not the two very academic books. So I've just been working my own way, doing it my way. And I know what solid scholarship is. I know where it gets constipated, and I don't want to deal with that. And I know where it's grounded, and I know how you can weave in the more intuitional part of it and the personal. And that's what I'm doing. And I can tell you, Liz, lately in some of these interviews, I am astounded at the level of the conversation that I'm having with people, because I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm just an open channel right now. I mean, this was happening at the previous cycle of interviews for the mystery
Yeah.
tradition of miraculous conception, but I just got the message over these last 2 weeks since the book has come out that I'm moving up to a whole new level with this material. That all of the agony I've gone through personally, the personal stuff I've had to heal, is starting to come to fruition, so that I can hold this stuff at a deeper level and talk about it from there. And that's the magic and mystery of what seems to be happening with this new book. I literally have had one interviewer say to me, I have slept with this under my pillow because I feel like there's transmissions coming.
Wow.
I had another friend who said she had a hysterectomy. She was having pelvic problems. Unbelievably, one night she woke up, she was so upset. She had just gotten my book, and she just had the intuition, because she's kind of a medical-ish to intuitional person, to put the book on her womb. And I just am like, oh my gosh, what is happening here? Like, it just feels like doors are opening. So there's the content of the book, and then there's the meta of what's going on around the book that is so amazing. And I just had a client today who just told me about a dream she had where she had been given a message about the importance of this book. And I'm like, oh my gosh.
Amazing.
Right. And I'm like, okay, because I'm coming from this, more like from the academic-y, moving into this whole thing. But I'm just feeling like a lot of doors are suddenly starting to open for people around this material. And it's taking my breath away a bit.
Yeah, it's like, I mean, what came up for me as you were saying that is even thinking about how you are perhaps not as as a physical child, like a human child, but you are playing this role that you're talking about in like birthing this material, which has a purpose and a ripple and all of that so much larger than you. It's
Yes.
really powerful.
Because I didn't have children in this life. I never became pregnant, and I just didn't feel that was my path.
Yeah.
Um, and I just had a passion. I call it a transmission. Just yesterday in cacao ceremony, I'm like, oh, that's so cool. Thank you. Transmission, transmission. I've
Mm.
had what I'm delivering is a transmission.
Hmm.
And so that's my baby.
Oh,
These are my babies. And yeah, so it's pretty astounding when you
yeah.
think, you know, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I know we're almost out of time, but I wanted to ask you because I feel like you're kind of alluding to this, and let's just give this a little bit more space and tap into that oracular part of you too, which is what's your sense of why now? Right? There's always a
I,
time in which we're ready for information, and we seem to be ready for this. Why now?
yeah, cosmic global timing. I think we've all seen, a lot of us who've been around for a few decades have seen the Mary Magdalene movement.
Yes.
That started 40 years ago with various things that started coming out. And then it's like a tidal wave now. People can't get enough Mary Magdalene, right?
Yes.
But Mother Mary has taken really 40 years to start being unveiled and uncloaked like that, even though there have been some wonderful scholars like Ali Cattus who along the way, and Charlene Spretnak and so forth, who've been looking at Mother Mary from different perspectives. But again, those books have been largely sequestered in academia. And so I've been teasing these threads and bringing it into accessibility, combining it, with all of these other aspects. And I think that it's when I listen to other oracles and my own inner oracle, there's something momentous about this time on Earth. Barbara Marciniak, who was a Pleiadian channeler, used to call like this 25-year window from, I forget which it was, but it was like kind of like right around now as the nanosecond, but that it's an important point, a pivot point in like the destiny of our universe, because we're all holographically connected. It's spooky action at a distance. It's, the holographic connection, the nested realities. So, and we're not alone on planet Earth. There are interdimensional beings of every stripe and color, and they've been working with us. They've been working against us. We are part that, we're even understanding our DNA. Oh my gosh, we're not even, what is a human? Where am I from? I'm from the stars. Okay. We're connecting with our star lineages, our star understandings. The calcification is coming off our third eyes after a long descent down in the Kali Yuga. We're starting to reawaken, and people are remembering. They're remembering who we are, who we were, where we're going, what we need to do. And Mother Mary and the Marys and the Sophia Christos mission, as I call it, is a big part of this that has been around for quite some time in various forms and guises, the most recent one of 2000 years ago, but they're still active on the inner planes. And so they're here for us. They're here for us as personal healers. They're here for us as spiritual mentors, activators, awakeners, empowerers. This is what Mother Mary did in her life. And that's what I talk about in quite a bit of detail in The Secret Life of Mother Mary, about how she was a mentor for all of those early apostles, and especially the women, and how this continues today. She was a mentor to Mother Mary Magdalene. All these hidden things, so like just even hearing these concepts like, oh my God, Mother Mary was the mother-in-law of Mary Magdalene, your mind starts going, what? You have an awakening just with these concepts, let alone the details, let alone then how you access these beings to find your own inner Mary, to find your own inner Magdalene, to find your own inner Jesus. That's what they're doing. They're holding up the mirror. They're like, we are you. This is the latest channeling I've received. We are you. We are simply here to show you this is you and how to access it.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm wanting to, this is listeners won't be able to see it, but I wear Mary. She's yeah, she's always with me. And it's interesting because I have a little 8-pointed star for the goddess Inanna that I wear as well. And I recently just put them on the same chain because I think they belong together. There's that aspect of Mary too that to me is holding just something so much larger. For me, I've always known her to be so much bigger than what the Christian church was telling me that she was.
That's right. She's the
Yeah.
eighth Pleiadian sister.
Yeah.
She's the eighth star. And okay, that's what I channeled recently. That was like, holy crap, as I've started to become aware of the seven sisters of the Pleiades as the seven virgin starseed mothers of the world.
Yes.
And William Henry has really helped me to connect how Mother Mary is part of that whole stream. And then I received, yes, Mother Mary is the eighth Pleiad, the eighth Pleiadian. She brought forth, the Jesus Christ avatar. They brought forth these other beings onto the planet and seeding humanity with their higher vibrational DNA, right? So these are deep stories that are only now we're at a critical mass of being able to even understand them, comprehend them, and go forward with them, where 10, 20 years ago, it would have been too much, but people are ready now. Our consciousness is opening. Many, many more people on the planet are suddenly having these conscious awakenings. And that's why the now.
Yeah. Amazing. I feel like our time has flown by, Marguerite. I want to hold up your book again for those who are actually watching. The Secret Life of Mother Mary, Divine Feminine Power for Personal Healing and Planetary Awakening. Go read this book, y'all. It's amazing. And now I want to read all your books, even the academic ones. I love getting down into the academia. So exciting. Tell us where people can find more information. And I know you've got some things coming up.
Yes. So obviously, the easiest thing is to go to sevensistersmysteryschool.com. The seven is written out, SEVEN, sisters, plural. And all the information will be right there. But just to, and you can be kept abreast, you can get on our email list. I send out a Sacred Sunday e-news with all sorts of information and the latest of what we're doing. But as of this recording, I believe this will come out in time just prior to a free masterclass that I'm doing, which is called What is a Mary Priestess? What is a Magdalene Priestess? And is this a path for you? So it's going to be 45 minutes on August 6th. You can sign up at sevensistersmysteryschool.com, or I think you might provide a link in the show notes, an anchor
Yep.
link. And that is kind of a little introduction to the Mary and Magdalene priestess training that I'm doing that starts September 10th and runs 6 months, where you're going to have really a lived, embodied experience of all sorts of initiations that are tied to what I'm writing about in the book, and then new oracle material that I'm going to be bringing forth. I mean, we could have a whole conversation on this, but there will be explanation of this in that free masterclass so that you know what it is. The registration continues through August 28th. You must register by August 28th to be part of that training. And it's going to be very exciting and very manageable. It's not like humongous amounts of homework or it's going to stress you out, right? It's just going to be a fascinating experience into a temple that we're just kind of co-creating together, and that draws in the powers of the Marys into our own lives.
Love it. It sounds amazing. And
Thank you.
yes, and I'll make sure this is all in the show notes. And Marguerite, thank you so much for your time. This was amazing. So it's an honor to know you, and I so love your work in the world.
Thank you so much, Liz. I really appreciate that. And
Yeah.
thank you for having me and allowing people to find out about this, and also for the amazing work that you're doing through these conversations, bringing them to the public.
Yeah. Oh, it's such a joy. Such a joy. Isn't it fun to do work? I put in air quotes that just like feeds your
Of
soul, right? It's the best. It's the
course.
best.
Yep.
Yes. And thanks to all of you for listening. As always, I'm so grateful for you for tuning in and being interested in these conversations and sharing back with me how they're changing you. I love hearing that too. So, yeah, if you like the show, you can subscribe. You can tell your friends about it. There's a third one that I usually say you can give it a favorable review. Yeah, you can do all those things. And until then, take very, very good care of yourselves. And I will be with you again soon.